How can we put health back into healthcare? That's the topic that we're going to be addressing today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager. Today, I have the privilege of having an esteemed guest with me. His name is Dr. Avery Jackson III, and he is a board-certified neurosurgeon. He's also the founder, CEO, and medical director of the Michigan Neurological Institute. And in his spare time, I don't know where he had that, he became best-selling author of the book, The God Prescription. And he's also founding a brand new concept, a network of certified and independent practices and institutions across the country that are free to provide member-centered wellness, a whole new vision of healthcare called the body healthcare. So we're going to talk about what it looks like if you were to take back the health piece of healthcare instead of it only being focused on sickness, on drugs, on treating the disease with just the surface symptoms being addressed. So welcome to Flourish-Meant, Dr. Jackson. I am thrilled to have you on the show. Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you very much, Tina. It's a pleasure.
Dr. Jackson, I would like to focus now on the relationship between our neurological well-being, our physical well-being, our spiritual well-being, and our emotional well-being. Can we start with the neurological well-being and how that kind of impacts many of those other things altogether?
Sure. Our neurologic well-being is it's fascinating. There is an interplay between our emotional selves and our past, and our neurologic selves, our brain, and how our brain dictates what happens to the other cells in our bodies. And pretty much everyone has been through some stressor in their life. And as a young child, many people have had emotional or sexual abuse even. Those events that have occurred are actually carried forward in our subconscious mind, and then they color our perception of the reality around us. And that translates into what many people know as the fight or flight response. And so that we can actually become overvigilant or overstimulated by either fear or by some anxiety because of an event that's happened in the past. And now we have these triggers that are before us. And so when people, for instance, when they don't agree with you, it can go from just a neurological sense of irritation to a fear or an anxiety that can really be completely out of control and manifest in something like POTS disease, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, in which a person can have an overwhelming emotional encounter and literally drop their blood pressure and their heart rate goes up because of an interaction. And so we've not seen this years ago, but it's becoming more and more prevalent, especially post-COVID. And I believe that's because of not only the COVID infection, the vaccines, but also the stressors now have become greater, and people are realizing that there is this manifestation in the brain and the emotions, and then also in the physical body, and frankly also in our faith life and in our faith being challenged. It starts in the your memory, and so in the brain, and from there is this a sense of either well-being or a sense of that something is awry, including the anxiety that many people face. And then, we have decisions to make, right? We know that, for instance, in our emotional lives, studies have shown that 85% of disease processes in our physical bodies are either caused by or directly contributed from anxiety and instability in our emotional lives. So the body healthcare, for instance, is really focused on addressing who we are in our faith and building up our faith selves, our wellness, as well as having that spill over into our emotional lives, and in terms of stabilizing expectations of the world around us and our worlds, and then having that translate, that emotional stability to translate into physical stability and in our overall health. And that comes about by raising people who have a solid understanding of all three areas, your spiritual life, your emotional, and your physical life, and what it takes to build all three of those up. In the past, we were just so focused on our physical selves as allopathic docs that the emotional self and the spiritual self were never addressed at all. And now we're realizing that we need to combine all three, and we need to understand that we are much more complex than what science and medicine seem to indicate. Another illustration would be when someone is stressed out, let's say on an interview, they have sweaty palms and their heart rate increases. Well, it starts based on your memory or understanding of the environment that you're in. So maybe from before you had an encounter that may not have been the best encounter, and then translates to your brain, and your brain then sends information from the frontal lobe to your hypothalamus, and your hypothalamus then says, hey, listen, this is a kind of a stressful time. Therefore, we need the heart rate to go up. And so we send out catecholamines, and we send out, signals that make your palms sweat and your heart rate increase. And they're all kind of connected. And we're seeing now in this day and age that more people are being exposed to more stress than ever before, and especially our young population with the advent of social media, for instance. And so there is a greater need to get the young folks out and exercise, so that we can decrease our ADHD by increasing endorphins when there's more exercise. Relationships have to really be emphasized, affirmation, but also resilience. And resilience means that you're going to run into problems. And how do you handle those challenges and problems? And then lastly, and most importantly, in our faith, how do we really educate people about who we are and who God is to us, and especially in the Judeo-Christian faith? How do we do that in a way that it will be internalized by all, right? And so that means love. God is love. And so to be able to internalize love will have an impact that's far-reaching in our spiritual, emotional, and our physical selves. And so that's the challenge that the body health care is up for.
So we're seeing a rise, especially among the younger populations, in depression, in anxiety issues, and also in that lack of resilience. People will give up too quickly. They won't persevere. They won't get back up again and try harder. It's not among all young people, but we are seeing that to become more prevalent than it ever used to be. As parents, as people who love those who are younger than us, how can we reach out to those who have these needs? And they are neurological in nature to some extent because of what they're putting in. We're seeing a lot of environmental issues where they're having media stress, social media stress, video game stress, which is a pseudo stress, but the brain, as you mentioned already, reacts the same way to a war game as it would to an actual threat. So overexposing yourself to that stimuli has an effect long term, and what we eat as well has an effect. So all of those things are off. What are some things that we can do to love those around us and bring them back to center and help them to get started on a path to health and wellness?
That's wonderful. So Tina, yeah, I think what we can do first of all is show love. And the way that we show love is we have to know who is the creator of love, and which is God. God is love, and I really mean that in the most sincere way, because once we can understand and know what love looks like, then we can provide that love to others in a smile, in our gestures, in our postures, in how we speak and what we say and what we don't say. And then most importantly, in our actions, right? It means that we have to expend some energy and maybe some sacrifice to show other people their value, and to show people that they are loved by us and by God. We can, as a community, demonstrate this love in a way that it will translate into spiritual, emotional, and physical wellness. Because of social media and the gaming and some of the social anxieties and phobias that we're seeing, people are becoming somewhat less relational. And I would say the antidote to that would be just the opposite, to be more relational. And so for the parents out there, my advice would be to get your children away from the TV, away from the social media. Interacting with other children and other people, I think, is extremely important. Getting them outside to get the sun that they need, the exercise that they need and require as they're growing, I think, is also very important. And for the average adult, I would also say that getting yourself in social situations that are healthy are important. Your place of worship in terms of church is extremely important, not only for you, but also for those that are around you. And so I think our mindset needs to shift a bit to say there's a reason that we're here, and there are people that are put in our lives for us, but also we're in their lives for a reason as well. And I think once we are a bit more on purpose in our callings, and we're a bit more on purpose in how we can be a help or a blessing to others, and we're willing to expend the energy and time and resources to do that, I think that's when we have a fix that will be very powerful and effective and long lasting.
I think it's really important that you mentioned that relationships are so vital. As a neurosurgeon, do you see a difference in the way the brain develops at any stage or age with regard to whether you have healthy relationships with other people in your lives? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can. So I'll give you an animal model example and then a person example, human example. So study done at Harvard looking at in a monkey population and relationships. So they put a mother monkey in a cage and then two baby monkeys in the cage. And so she breastfed and so forth. And then they took these two monkeys and put them in a population of other monkeys to see how quickly they'd socialize. And there was no problem at all. Then in the second group, there was a wire monkey that had fur on her, and they had her holding a bottle and put two baby monkeys in the cage, and the monkeys, and then transferred them to this population of monkeys. And they noticed that socially there were some challenges initially in integrating and socializing with the other monkeys, but eventually it happened. Then there was a third population in which there was a wire monkey holding a bottle, and then put the two monkeys in the cage with the wire monkey that represented the mom. And then from there took those two monkeys and put them into the population of other monkeys to try to socialize. And they never socialized. It was horrific. They were very fearful. They were angry, and they couldn't socialize. So that's one kind of controlled experiment that showed that socialization in general is vital, and especially when it starts in the home. The human example is, we've seen what happens with love, and love actually is the most addictive substance to your brain, by the way. The second one is sugar, and then the third one would be other chemicals and drugs. Because of the fact that we're all made to love, we've seen over and over again what happens when even the most hardened criminals are put in the right environment versus when they're put in the wrong environments. And so we know that at many jails and penitentiaries, the worst punishment that can be brought on any of the inmates is actually solitary confinement. So to take away the social aspect of the human experience, right? When we come together and we mentor each other and we encourage each other, then there's going to be improvement again in your spiritual, mental, and emotional health.
So, with the children that experienced isolation during the pandemic, how are we going to be able to respond to the need to repair those stages of development where their social needs were just not met?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's going to really come down to recognizing that the children have been traumatized. B, we're going to need a community We'll need the church to step up to the plate and not just be a social club, but really be the church that Jesus Christ envisioned and architected the church to be. And that means that we speak into the lives of the single moms and dads and the children in our church communities. And then our church then goes out to the rest of the community and provides that love and that support and that direction and the boundaries that we actually need. I mean, in the woke population, they're saying we don't need boundaries and we can kind of choose whatever we want to do. And it's, whatever. And they don't realize that that's very unhealthy to them, for instance. And we see that for the children, the devastation that's occurring with the gender confusion and with the other issues. And in large part due to either an event that happened in the past or significant emotional instability leading to decisions that can have a physical impact and scarring, as well as emotional impact and scarring as well.
And there's a neurological piece to that grooming and training and manipulation that's going on that makes people become what they say they already are.
That's right. And the opposite, right? So when you embrace someone and you genuinely care, when you're hugging them, you release oxytocin. And oxytocin is really important in developing relationship, right? It's fascinating from a neurophysiologic standpoint that there's so many different modulators that occur in the space of relationship, whether that's a touch on the shoulder, whether that's a hug, a smile, words of affirmation. All of these exercises, they can produce an internal environment that combats the stressful situations that children and adults are facing today, and especially post-COVID and the trauma post-COVID, with the addition of love, of affirmation. We can reverse many of these psychological and emotional events and trauma and scarring that occurred in the past and even the recent past.
I love the holistic approach that you are developing with the body health care. And I wish we had more time to get into more specifics again about that. If you are watching or listening only to the second video here, you want to go back and hear all the details in that first segment. But how can people stay connected with the body health care, get a copy of your book, The God Prescription, and stay connected with all the wonderful things that you have to offer, including Cardio Miracle?
I'll start first with Cardio Miracle, and I'll just say this, that the reason that I'm really big on it is because it's a nutrient that helps, with health overall. And I think it's something that we really need to incorporate in our daily routines for our emotional health and our physical health. And so it's an amazing supplement. And I'm just blown away by what I've seen in the science that supports it. And then for the God Prescription, you can go to www.thegodprescription.com and you can check out our website. You can become a partner. And also the book that speaks about spiritual, emotional, physical health. And then in terms of the body health care, this new parallel health care system that we're building nationally, you can go to www.thebodyhealthcare.com and you can join and become a member, and then take advantage of our educational kind of offerings, both for clinicians and for non-clinicians, as well as network with clinicians and others around the country.
So what can members of the Body Health Care expect to receive as a member?
Yeah, so what they'll get, there's a monthly newsletter. There are educational sessions that occur weekly and biweekly, both for members that are clinicians and non-clinicians, and then the networking. That, as we're building, you can find someone who is like-minded in your region and then ultimately area as our numbers continue to grow. And then for publishing opportunities in our publishing company as well. It's a full-fledged parallel healthcare system, but this time it includes your spiritual and your emotional health as well as your physical health, right? So we're connecting like faiths across the country as well. And also the emotional support. There are events that are included as well. And so, again, the goal is to grow in a private setting or private sector, both in spirit, soul, and body together as one nation.
That is such a fantastic resource. I do hope that all of you will check out each of these in detail because the body healthcare is a very exciting alternative to our current sickness-based healthcare system. And get a copy of the God prescription and make sure that you stay in touch and keep following Dr. Avery Jackson III, who has a tremendous wealth of wisdom and expertise to offer. So thank you, Dr. Jackson, so much for being on Flourish-Meant today.
Thank you kindly, Tina. I appreciate it.
I hope that all of you listening were inspired to take back your health and take over your healthcare with wellness instead. And of course, I also hope that you will hit subscribe and come back to the next episode of Flourish-Meant.